Everybody, welcome back to Bayou Time. Harry McCullough here. It's time to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Gulf. And for that, we go to the executive director of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission. He's Chett Chiasson down in Fouchon. Hey, Chett, thanks so much for joining with us. You recovering from all the rodeo season down there? And I'm going to talk about cowboys.
Right. Thank you, Harry, for having me on again today. Yeah, we're been busy. The port's been busy, both from Fouchon and Grand Isle with all the rodeos, and still a few more left coming up, but kind of winding that down with school starting here at the end of this week.
Yeah, no doubt, and a little different too. I went down there, I guess, for the Fourth of July in Grand Island. It's like, ooh, a lot of stuff not here anymore. And so let's start there. Let's start with recovery from Port Fouchon. And how's the recovery going? You guys getting back up to speed and getting things rebuilt down there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's constant progress. That's what we're happy about, continuing to make progress every day. From just the Port Commission standpoint, we've had our public public bathhouse at the public boat launch in Fouchon bid that project out. So that's going to be coming under construction very shortly. Very happy to say that we just opened bids, and hopefully next week we'll approve those bids for the repair of our administrative building, because we're in a temporary building right now immediately behind that administrative building. So that needs pretty much a complete rebuild on the inside there because of the roof flew off, and a lot of water got in. We had to rip everything out, just like a lot of people's homes, unfortunately,
Yeah,
in this area in our region.
and you got those big warehouse facilities down there, which are great for big stuff, but they also catch a lot of wind when it comes through. Did those survive pretty good, all of those areas, or is that's all rebuild too?
So the majority of those survived okay. Like one of the newest ones that was built, Seaport 3, that survived very well. Seaport 2 took some major hit there, and they're in the process. Suez is in the process of rebuilding those. Their shipyard facility as well. The process of rebuilding or repairing that, because they're usable. The shipyard area is usable, and doing the things necessary, and many other facilities in the port that took damage or usable and operating. They're just continuing to make all of those repairs that are necessary to be at 100% full utilization and capacity.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk to like the superintendent of education. It's like they barely talk in education now. They're contractors and insurance people now. And I know, I know you're probably tired of dealing with that kind of stuff too, insurance and contractors and FEMA and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the port in particular. And it looks like we might have a compromise bill with Schumer and Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. Looks like he's going to compromise on that bill that may come. And everybody goes, oh, no, not an environmental bill. How's that going to affect us? But it may not be that bad for Fouchon. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is a compromise that was made by Senator Manchin and Senator Schumer, which again, on the surface, you would go, oh no, what are they doing? But in this case, it really has talks about energy and the environment, and really the thought process that we have here, where we're talking about a smart, balanced approach to the energy transition that everybody talks about, without leaving oil and gas out, because the reality is oil and gas is necessary and will be necessary for many, many, many years to come, because there is no technology that exists for us to be able to do anything that we do and enjoy anything that we enjoy on a daily basis without fossil fuels. So that's the reality of everything. So what this bill, very simply, because it goes into a lot of different things, very simply, it basically says we're going to continue to allow, as necessary, the exploration and production of oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico mainly, for offshore, as well as the lease sale that they had last year that they then did not move forward with in issuing those leases, would be reinstated if this bill passes. So it's really important for us to continue to move this forward. Now, obviously, there's a lot of politics that goes into all of this. We know that. This reconciliation bill or compromise bill would be good. Now, on the flip side, there are some tax implications in this bill that I know some industry folks do not like because it has some implications on dollars and cents. So that's something that we're continuing to look at to see if that'll force the bill to be stalled or what have you. So again, all in all, seems to be something that would be positive for us, positive for the port, positive for energy, positive for the price of a barrel of oil, positive for the price of gasoline at the pump.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And look, I'm sure they want to get something signed before that next upcoming election. It'll kind of satisfy the green part of the company, but also the rest of the world who's living in the real world knows you got to have your own energy supplies, and that would be a good and if that is the compromise, then maybe that'll be a good thing. I know we were all kind of worried about that, but hopefully that's what'll be in the bill, and we can actually benefit from that.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And we it's desperately needed. We all know what that we need all of this activity to take place in, especially in our region. And we understand energy, we understand offshore energy, and oil and gas is going to be key for a long time.
It seems like every interview we start with 2 years of COVID right into Ida, and in the energy sector, when COVID hit, it wasn't so much people couldn't go to work; it was like nobody was driving. So the price of oil just changed, and it's fluctuated ever since. What changes and where does the industry headed now? As you talk to industry leaders, where do they think that the energy industry is headed in the next year or two?
So if we can get some security with the industry in terms of certainty, because right now there's a lot of uncertainty. As we said in the previous segment, if this compromise bill passes and we continue to move forward and allow for offshore exploration and production to further enhance in the Gulf of Mexico, um, we can continue to get more business, and with that certainty, will bring more business. Today we're seeing 17 rigs drilling new wells in the Gulf of Mexico. That's the rig count right now. There's probably about 28 to 30 actual rigs doing something, but 17 drilling new wells in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's interesting because in the past we would see upwards of 30, 40, 50 rigs drilling in the Gulf at one time,
Mm-hmm.
where I think the times of that is probably changed, and we're not necessarily going to see that huge amount of rigs in the Gulf drilling new wells, especially in the deepwater Gulf of Mexico. I think the goal and the hope would be that it would open things up a little bit to maybe get to that 20 to 25 rig range, which would be good, which would be a lot better than we've seen in the past, in the recent past. And we can see more business, more activity. But what's happening right now is with this uncertainty continuing, there's less rigs drilling because they kind of have permits in hand, and they're wanting to kind of slow roll the activity to make sure that they have enough permits in hand and enough work for the long term, rather than hurrying up, drilling up for all the permits that they have in their hand. And then what are they going to do in the back end if they can't get another permit, if they can't buy another lease? So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So it's less activity, constant activity, which allows for the service sector, which is who our customers are, the service sector to plan a little better. But we certainly would love to see more activity so that we can have more business and more activity coming in and out of our port and
Sure.
our region and our
Right,
community.
right. Because that supplies everything, from the drilling supplies to food for the offshore workers, all that kind of stuff going through there.
And key to point out, Harry, is that you know there's all production is long term, but really where all the business is, where all the effort is for the majority of the commodities, the services, the goods, in this industry are on the drilling
Drilling.
side.
Hmm.
So if we don't see, an uptick or more drilling activity, then that keeps the amount of services, goods and services needed down a bit.
Yeah, no doubt. So, and obviously it's changed. It's a lot of deep water rigs
Mhm.
now that are bigger and can pump more oil out in those situations. The shelf itself,
Mhm.
where are we at in the shelf? I know Apache had a lot of those rigs, and then they sold to Fieldwood, who I'm not sure is Fieldwood
So
still Fieldwood anymore. Anything activity at all in the shelf at all?
yeah, there's some activity on the shelf. Cantium a few years ago purchased the Bay Marchand field from Chevron. And they've had some activity there, kind of reworking some of those wells. Those that the Bay Marchand field is a very productive field. So that there's some activity there, and there's some other shallow water activity in the Gulf of Mexico. But I can tell you, when I looked last at the number of rigs drilling and where they were drilling, at least new wells, um, there were none in the shallow water. A lot of production activity, obviously,
Right, right.
but not a considerable amount of drilling in the shallow water on the shelf,
Right.
as we've seen many, many, many years ago. In the heyday of the '80s and early
Right.
'90s.
Yeah. Well, and when shale took over, I guess it's easier just to drive out to a site as opposed to get a boat and go out there and deal with Jones Act and everything else that goes with the expenses of being on the water like that. So,
Right.
yeah, that certainly has changed over the last 30 years or so for sure. So,
That's correct.
yeah, we got about a minute left to go in this segment. So, it is interesting that when you said that they'll try and bunch together a bunch of leases to kind of make sure they have a long term business. So even though those leases were open, it doesn't mean new things were happening.
That's correct. And remember, a lease, not necessarily a lease, but a permit lasts for
Permit.
about 5 years. So once you have the lease, then you do all the things necessary to go and get your permits to drill. A permit lasts for about 5 years, and that's it. It's a shelf life. So they have to kind of plan themselves out when there's not a ton of new permits coming out and not any new leases being sold.
Right.
You kind of plan your business out to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And like I say, about 20 seconds now. Who's the big players right now? Who's the big players out in the Gulf?
Shell, Chevron, BP are your three major players, um, and there a ton of others.
Right, right.
Arena Offshore, uh, Total, ENI Petroleum. You just there's so many that are still out there.
And I guess now we can move to the next step, and that would be green and blue energies, and possibly the role that the port may have in those industries. And you said you've had a couple of visitors lately that they want to check out, maybe wind fields or LNG, which is natural liquefied gas. Liquefied natural gas. So, talk to me a little bit about where we're headed and what you guys are preparing for.
So we understand in this region, this area, at the port, and our customers do. We understand offshore energy. So whatever that offshore energy production may be, our customers, the port, can service it. So, historically, it's been oil and natural gas. Um, and even though we know that oil and natural gas are here for a long time, there is some transition. There is some benefit to looking at other energy sources, greener energy sources, with less emissions or no emissions. So that's what's going on now, and we have been taking part in a lot of these offshore wind seminars and different conferences, just putting Fouchon out there, putting Lafourche Parish out there, putting our region out there as a good supply chain service base for any offshore energy activity that may take place in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah,
So as we've done so, we have several companies that are interested and have spoken to us and visited the port, looking at that supply chain for the potential for offshore wind. There's some focus on not just federal waters, but state waters. because of its proximity to the transmission lines coming back in. So it's all fine and good to put up a wind turbine, but then you have to bring that power back in, right? So you need
Right.
to find the best location for that. Fouchon is a good spot for that because the transmission, lines are actually coming down to the coast there. So that's all of the positives that we have on this front, to attract this new energy wave that may be coming in terms of offshore wind. Um, so we've been having, not forgetting who we are and what we do on a daily basis, but in this transition potential, putting our best foot forward and hopefully attracting new business for our community, more investment for our community, more job creation for our community, and that's going to benefit us for the long term.
When you talk to those companies, it is exciting when you talk about a wind turbine and possibly combining it with hydrogen fuels and stuff that may be down the road as far as coming terminal technology that may be coming down here. When might we see those turbines like you see in Europe or in some other places? When might we see those out in the Gulf?
Look, we may see them as early as 2 to 3 years from now.
Wow.
It depends what's going on in terms of, the state of Louisiana is looking to do a state water um, lease sale sometime late next year or early 2024. The federal government, BOEM, and the federal government Department of Interior is looking to do an offshore wind lease sale at the beginning of 2023. But just last week, they announced that the only two areas that they're going to sell leases in are in an area off of the coast of Cameron Parish, or around south of Lake Charles, and an area off the coast of Galveston, Texas. Now, I commented at a task force meeting because I sit on the BOEM renewable Gulf of Mexico renewable task force, and I commented saying, we support what they're doing in terms of, selling those leases in those areas, but would have hoped that they would have opened up all of the Gulf and let the business community decide. And because what we did see was that there was a considerable amount of interest by companies who want to be in this industry, the offshore wind industry. Um, Port Fourchon, or the water south of Port Fourchon in that general region, were of interest to them. But they took that off the table because of the shrimping industry and
Mm.
the bird, the migratory bird things that we see in this area. So what that says is it's not off the table forever. They need more research. So that's what we're going to be pushing for now, is to be able to look at that. But with that being said, the state, I think where we're going to be focused now is on the state side, and having interested parties, again, people who are very interested in Port Fourchon as its service base for offshore wind off the state waters in Louisiana.
Right. And yeah, we certainly can see, like I say, a combination of if hydrogen finally gets up and rolling, see combination platforms, something we can build those platforms down here as well. And then obviously has a gateway right into it as you come in through Fouchon. So, Tim, about 20 seconds left to go, Chett. So, what's next? What are you guys seeing down there? Anything coming in this summer that y'all going to deal with? Hopefully, not
Well,
a
we're
storm.
continuing to do hopefully no storms come our way.
Right, right,
We're all praying for that.
right.
But we're continuing to do the things that we've done for years, where, every time we dredge our channels, we utilize that material beneficially to create more marsh in our area. We just completed a dredge project creating about 250 acres of marsh to the north of the port, and we're moving forward with more projects. Hopefully should happen sometime mid next year, 2023, and starting to deepen Bell Pass and Bayou Lafourche.
All right, Chett. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you guys next time right here on Bite.